Hi everyone, and I was hoping you were following all the tutorials beforehand and you got a decent looking head. Remember that we have the low poly and the high poly head available right here. You should have something relatively less than 2,000 polygons for the head, and then a head including the eyes, and then roughly around 7,000 with that. So we have to move on to the next step, and that's creating the ears. So I'm actually going to hide my head references, and I'm going to make a new layer called ear ref. Ear ref. So this is the ear reference. I'm going to create a new plane on the side view. Let's just hit L for left view if you want to. And I'm going to load in my ear material to do that. Remember to hit M on the keyboard to go to your material editor. Load up a new material by double clicking on it. Double click on the diffuse color sphere here. Go to bitmap, find your image wherever it may be. Mine's on my desktop. Should be called ear. There it is. And it's a square image 512 by 512. So I just click show shaded material in viewport. And when I go here, I will make sure that this is a square image 512 by 512. Oops, 512. So now I have an ear for my approximate size that I need to include on the final model, which is great. So we're going to use the same method of the poly by poly ear buildup that we used for building the head. So what I'm going to do is, I have my plane here. I'm going to go to my perspective mode. Just going to push this a little far back because anytime I create a new plane, it'll be in the center of the viewport, like on the grid. It'll be on the line following down here. So now if I push that further back, it's easier to work with. So now I go to my left view. I'm going to turn this one. I'm going to go to show frozen in gray, turn off. It's not renderable. Great. And I'm going to freeze it. Turn off the grid, hit G. And I'm going to make a plane right here. And make sure that its set segments is 1 by 1. So it's just a cube. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this to an edit poly. And I'm going to extrude this all around the ear shape. So I'm going to grab here. I'm going to extrude once, twice, 3 times, and 4. I'll turn this model to a dark blue so you can see it better. There you go. And make sure to do your slight rotations. Remember that with the polygons flowing, we're only working on it with a 2D plane, so we don't have to worry about width and height yet. We're just worrying about the actual shape. So right now I'm just adjusting the shape and making sure the vertexes flow. So remember that this has to look like it's flowing with the skin of the ear, right? So right now you can see this flow now, right? And we're going to keep that going. So we're going to extrude it a whole bunch more times. As many as you see fit. Try and keep it still low density. So I'm just going to go here once, twice, 3 times. Really, you could see the outline of what we're trying to do, right? We're just trying to build this outer thick part of the ear, the outer lobe of the ear, if you will. And I'm just grabbing it, moving it along. I'm still relatively low poly. We are going to turbo smooth this afterwards. So you don't need to panic too much about the detail there. Now with the lobe, we get a little bit thicker. We thicken this up a bit, so I just increase the size slightly. Like that. And then I'm going to thin it out a bit again here. And then finally, I go to my vertex tool and I weld these last vertexes, or collapse. You can go to collapse here. I collapse these together like that. Now, the next step, because we're working on a pretty high detailed ear, we're going to extrude the inner ear part. So what we're going to do is we're going to extrude from, let's grab these edges here. We're going to extrude this eardrum. So this part of the ear is the part that sticks out slightly. Like if you feel around your ear, this is the skin part that kind of pops out of your ear a bit. So that's what we're building here. We just have this little part right there. Kind of like that. And from here, we're actually going to extrude this line across here. I'm going to thin this out slightly thin this out. Rotate it pretty heavily like that. And then match the shape of this curve here. And for now, we don't need to weld it to anything. I'm just going to, leave it hanging in the air like that. So what you should have is something that looks like this right now. And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to extrude inwards slightly. So what I want you to do is grab the edges from here all the way back to approximately here. Let me go to my left view. See, yeah, about there. And then I want you to grab these edges right here. And extrude them backwards slightly. So you can see we have something that looks like this. Now, still with those edges held, just use the scale tool slightly. You should get something that looks like that. Slightly scaled in a little bit. And then I want you to deselect the outer edge. Edge is right here. Deselect these. And then just push these ones. Scale these ones a little bit more. Like that. And like that. So the ear is coming together pretty decently. So what we're going to do now is, because the ear is actually a rather complex shape, right? If you felt your ear or looked at references, you can see a lot of complexities, but a lot of it curls inside of the ear, right? So we're actually going to take this edge, so the inner ring that we created here, we're going to take this edge here, and we're actually going to extrude this in as well. We're going to do a couple extrusions. About 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now I'm going to push this one inside the ear. So I'm actually going to 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to adjust these vertexes a little bit. I'm going to play around a second. So I'm going to grab this vertex here, push it forward, grab this vertex here, push it forward. This is more flatter than it should. Oh, this is should be more flat. So push this forward like this. Like that. So when it comes to the ear, it's actually pretty. I'm not gonna say complex, but it is very complex. Very complex is the word I'm looking for. There's a lot of little intricate shapes, especially if you're trying to create a high polygon ear. But the good thing about doing it right once is that you can copy and paste this normally for a lot of characters. So it's pretty much just taking your time and adjusting it. So what I did here was I just adjusted all my vertexes so that they all loop to the back, right? So this actually has some depth to it. And I'm just rotating it right now, just making sure these polys look good. This. If I go to my left view, I want to just edit this slightly to create a little bit of a flow. You can see we have this like ring flow down here, and I want to make sure this ring flow kind of reflects what we're doing. So in my left view, I just adjust this slightly here, and I make sure that this flows downward. And we can make this stretch out across the ear a little bit more, a little bit better by doing this. But make sure we still want this flow, right? We want these polygons to look like they flow into this. So we're going to stretch this out a bit more. Stretch this. Okay, so we got about that. I think that looks pretty good. There you go. So the next step, what we want to do is we want to start connecting these polygons a little bit closer. So we're going to need to start merging and adding new polygons. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Edit Polygon Mode. I'm going to go to Create. I'm going to left click here once, there once, there once, there once. So now we created a bridge from this part into the inner part of the ear here, right? And we need to create polys here as well. Left, left, left. So I created a poly here, and I created the poly here, and then a poly down here for the earlobe. The inner earlobe, sorry, right here. So now that you have this, correct any vertex adjustments that need to be happening. So right here, I see I should probably pull this back just a little bit. It shouldn't be as squished as it is. And it's here like that. And then maybe push this backwards. Like that. That looks pretty good. And I'm going to push back the inner ear like that. Not too bad so far, not too bad so far. So now that we have our ring, we have the poly down here that seals this up. We're going to extrude these edges here, and we're going to weld this part shut. So I'm going to extrude these, scale them a bit, and I'm going to vertex weld or vertex collapse, whichever you prefer here, and collapse this one over here. Collapse and collapse. And make sure to try and keep this flow going. Like I said before, it's always about this flow. So I'm making sure it looks like this flows rather well. Looks like it does. Needs maybe a little bit of adjusting here, like that. Yeah, it's not too bad. You can always adjust it afterwards as well, so you don't need to panic too much. But we have to do the same thing for these two polygons over here as well. So extrude these two. Or if you have more polygons, that's okay. Just extrude as many as you have. I know your number may vary a little bit, but yeah, the practice is still the same. We just need to collapse these here because we're creating pretty much the inner shell of the inner ear right now. And that looks pretty good so far. Looks great. So now we're getting that nice inner ear. And basically, we have to just keep sealing this off, right? So if you're following along, it's the process of just basically creating new edges and sealing off these edges and making sure everything kind of flows. So now that we have these polygons here, we can go to create in our polygon mode, create. I'm going to create 2 new polys here. Like I said, if you have more, that's okay. Just create as many it does to pretty much seal this inner ear part. And then I'm going to create polygons here to seal this part as well. Now this is going to be a 1 polygon right here. And then I'm going to create, I have 2 triangles here, but that's okay. 1 triangle here, 1 triangle here, then a square there, a polygon there. So now I get this nice inner ear going on. So we have a lot of detail that we can play around with. We can also shrink in this detail if we really want to, but trust me when I say when it comes to building inner ear, more detail is not a bad thing. You want the detail to push in and to adjust as much as you can, which is a good thing. And then you can always play around with these details. And we can always lower it afterwards, so don't panic too much. So then, now after we're done the inner ear, basically we're moving now to the outer ear. Now this is where it's going to be a lot of welding. Basically we're just going to extrude all this outer part to match the inner ear here, and then like all this emptiness will be filled up. So let's fill at the top first. Basically, I'm going to grab these, and I'm going to start by pushing it back slightly, like that. I'm going to vertex collapse these 2 here, or you can target weld. So if you go to edit, your edit ribbon here, and you go to vertexes, target weld. So vertices, target weld, left click on it. Now you can left click on one vertex, left click on the second vertex, and remember that these kind of fly to their locations, right? So you can see here that we're going to run into an issue right here, right? So what I'm pretty much going to do at this point is I'm just going to back up a bit. I'm going to create 2 polygons here. Then what I'm going to do is edit polygon. I'm going to create a large polygon right here, like that. So it is a polygon shape. It is large. It may seem a little off-putting. You might look at it as a big triangle, but it's actually a 4-sided polygon. So as long as it's 4 sides, it's a polygon, and it works fine for what we need it to be used for. And then I'm going to have a triangle here. Like that. So what this is going to turn into here, see we have this shape now. We don't want to create an n-gon shape, but what we have here is we just left click here, this one, this one, this one, this one, is we have a very rough polygon that pops forward. So it's a bit tricky, but just create the triangles and polygons until it actually fits, pretty much what your shape is. That's the important part. Never create something with more than 5 vertexes together, only 4 vertexes. Remember to left click on each vertex once, and then the last vertex the second time to create the new polygon, and you should get a decent looking shape here. Like so. So what we should test out first is we add our turbo smooth or our mesh smooth and see how this looks. Doesn't look too bad so far. We're going to add some more detail right now to make it look a little bit better. So make your adjustments here. Before we start finishing off with this little hole here, I want you to go to your mesh smooth or turbo smooth. I want you to make adjustments now to make it look like a nicely shaped ear. So for me, a lot of what I want to do is create a nice thick outer rim that looks substantial. So what I'll do is I'll turn off my wireframe here, and I'm just going to shape it in my left view right here. Let me check my wireframe out here. Yep, perfect. So I'm just pushing in the top vertices slightly, giving a little bit more lobe. I can push these more back. I can push them more forward if I want. Let's see. Big adjustment area that you probably want to expand on is the inner ear. This is where most people want to do their major adjustments to get that nice shape that they were creating. So what I'll do here is I'm actually going to grab this. I'm actually going to expand everything. And then I'll see what it looks like with turbo smooth on. Inner ear is looking not so bad. Pretty much what I want to do for the inner ear is because we created that nice loop that pushes on the inside, just pop this out a little bit too, right? So we can grab some of these vertexes, pop them forward. Pop it forward like that. See, now you get that nice loop going on the inside of the ear. If I add another mesh smooth loop. Oops. Here, vertex mode. I'll pop these down slightly. So basically what I'm trying to do is that loop that we created on the inside of the ear, I'm just trying to make sure it looks like it can be thickened up slightly. So I get that nice look of the loop going on the inside. So, and don't forget our outer lobe too needs to stick out a little bit as well. Once it gets smooth, it will smooth out really sharply. So then I go to mesh smooth. Now I can see this lobe sticks out more, and this definitely has a more of a it's pushed out more than the inner ear, but maybe I want to push, showcase that even more so. So I just play around with my vertexes here. Oh, there you go. That's much better. See that little playing around with those vertexes in the smooth mode makes that look so much better. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to push these two to create a more refined edge line. I'm just going to turn off wireframe mode for a second. There you go. And I'm creating the refined edge down here as well. And I probably want to loop these back maybe a bit further. So in my left view, I'll go to wireframe mode, pop this back a bit, pop this more up, like that. Scale these a little bit. Like that. I think this looks like a pretty good outer ear so far. We're going to fill out this empty spot here, but now we got this like nice empty gap. We got to push in that looks like the actual ear, and we'll be able to do some final edits from there and push away. So we can fill this final hole finally with some quads and polys. After the basic shape of the ear is done, you can fill it with just as much as you need to. So for me, I go to edit poly, polygon mode, and I just put in a triangle here, a polygon here, a triangle here, and last but not least, a polygon here. And then I see what it looks like with my mesh smooth on. And I get this pretty nice ear shape going on right there. So what we want to do is we also want to create a new series of edges inside this ear so that we can refine a bit of the inner ear. So if I go to vertex mode or let's turn off mesh smooth here, and I'll go to polygon mode, and I'll go to my cut tool. So polygon cut. I'm going to cut all the way from this edge here, the top of the new ring I created, the new polys I created. I'm going to cut around. Basically until I meet just below the earlobe. About, I'd say here. And what you want to do here is you want to remove the triangle here, because right now this is also making an n-gon. So because I created this, I want to weld these two vertices together. So I can either go to weld or collapse, and you have this, which creates polygons all flowing directly. So you can see this would have broken the flow with a triangle and a 5-sided polygon, but I'm going to actually weld or collapse these two together, and then I turn mesh smooth on and create a much refined ear. And now you have some more polygons to play around with. So if you think that you need to push in your ear here, your ear pushes out here, let's say, it goes in, but then it scoops up a bit. Definitely do that and play around with those shapes to make sure you get that shape you like. Now I'm getting that little puff out and puff back in. I kind of really like that. So that's good. So now our next step is we got to create the outer ear that to extrude inwards to the face, right? So I'm going to I'm going to go to my left view here. I'm going to turn off my mesh smooth for a moment. Go to my edges. I'm going to grab the edges that start from the top part of the inner ear. So this edge right here. I'm going to loop around. So there you go. Hopefully you can see that a little bit better. I'm going to loop around. I'm going to grab all the way down here to right here. And what I'm pretty much going to do is extrude them twice. Okay, I'm going to extrude them twice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extrude once, scale them slightly outwards, like that. And extrude them again, like that. maybe do a little bit of a rotation, however you feel. Now we get a nice outer ear shell right there. So what you should get, hopefully, is a nice smooth outer ear like that. And now we still have some earlobe that needs to be cleaned. My earlobe's a little bit big, so what I actually might do, because I have a slender female character, is shrink it down a lot. And you can see, because I did this extrusion here, it sticks out quite a bit. So be sure to play around with your extrusions and make sure that you get the shape that you kind of were thinking about for your character. For me, I might scale down my ear a bit overall to match my reference better, something like that. And then push these parts in a little bit forward. And then have it kind of puff out as it goes. Don't forget that mesh smoothing will shrink your ear, or turbo smoothing will shrink your ear. You can see it shrank it a little bit. So be sure to play around and adjust that. So go to vertex mode with your mesh smooth on and play around as much as possible to get the shape that you want out of this. Remember that with 3D stuff, it's all customizable, right? Just because I say something or someone else says something doesn't mean you can't go forth and really edit your heart's content out to do whatever you want. The whole point of 3D is to be super creative and enjoy yourself and create unique things that you sort of want to create it. And that includes as much as an ear, as little as an ear. You can be as creative as you want and adjust and make sure you get the results that you want. So there you go. That's not a bad ear at all. You may want to do some adjustments. Like for me, I should probably puff out this part here. It's still a bit flat. So try and make sure that it's not entirely flat. There should be definitely some adjustments to make sure that your shape is shapely. So parts that push in, parts that push out. Definitely important when it comes to this type of 3D model, because it's pretty simple. It's about the inner ear shape and stuff like that matters most. So we get this that goes on. So now that we have this ear, we're going to need to go to the next step, which is pretty much attach the ear to the face, right? So we had our have our ear shape, and make sure to keep mesh smooth off. We have our head shape. I'll hide this part of the face. I'll only have the one face on right now. And I go to my left view, right? So ear's done. I'm going to hide the ear reference and move this ear to my default layer. So I'm going to hide the ear reference. So you should have this low poly ear and this low poly head. And I'm going to move my ear pretty much the location the ear would be on my character. So let's say about, let's go to the front view. About here, right? So what I want to do is remove parts of the character's face so I have a place to put in my ear. So for me, I'm thinking roughly about here, this location right here. So if I go here, delete these polygons here. So delete kind of like the side of the face and make an empty spot for your ear to go into. And then scale it, adjust however you see fit. So pretty much what I like to do here is I sort out how the ear would actually fit on this character's head. So I kind of rotate it a bit, scale it if I need to. I go to my front view, I check out what it would look like, I rotate a bit around to make sure it would look okay, sort of around this character. So you make sure you got to rotate like that, and maybe a little rotate like this inward. Look at reference pictures of ears, of course. Do your best due diligent work to see how your character's ear would fit. But I think this looks pretty good for my character. And now I got to plan out the phase of actually, putting this ear on the character. So now that I know the location, I'm just going to move it a little bit back. I'm going to start editing this ear, right? So I need to create kind of a spot to make sure this ear fits on our character. Now we don't have many polygons on this character's head. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Well, I'll count the vertexes instead. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 8 vertexes to play with on the character's ear. So we need to make sure that we fit kind of the same 8 vertex example on the ear itself. And right now we have way too many. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to start welding these vertexes until we have roughly 8, if not 8 itself. So I go here. I'm going to turn off any preview mode, so I know what I'm doing. And I'm going to collapse some of these vertexes together. So they're going to form triangles. We don't need to worry too much about the triangles in the back of the ear. You're definitely not going to see it a lot. You're going to have, some of them turn into the shapes like this. So what I'm going to have is 1, 2, 3, and then actually what I'll do is, yeah, that's good. Good. So let's weld this one here. Yeah, let's weld that. Collapse or weld, whichever you prefer. Then this one here. So I'm pretty much welding every time I see 2 vertex points together. I'll just quickly weld these together or collapse. Collapse. And collapse, which brings 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Hey, 8 points right there, right? So we do have the front part of the ear as well that we need to sort of sort out and weld together. So we need to kind of create the ear hole shape as well and start welding this to the front of the actual character. Now we can weld these later on as we start attaching this to our head. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create this ear hole and reflect that on here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to grab these vertexes here. So I grabbed 8 vertexes. If you counted 8 vertex, I have 8 vertices selected here. 8 vertices, 8 vertices. What I do is I go to my left view, and I hold Shift and drag these vertices here. And I go clone to element. So what this will do is these vertices are floating in the middle of nowhere, but it allows me reference points to create new polygons here that will automatically weld to the polygons here, right? So basically what you're doing is you're setting a template for the ear inside this head. Once we attach everything together, so if I go to geometry attach, you can see these 8 vertices are still sitting here. So if I go to polygon mode and I go to create mode, you can see I have these polygons available. These vertexes, available. So that I can actually click here. See, I can create the base template for how my ear is going to sit on my model. Now this is going to be a bit tricky because some of these polygons will look a little bit stretched and messed up a little bit. But just do your best to make sure that they work for what you need. So, and we can do our adjustments right afterwards. So I have one triangle. I will do my best to try and make as less triangles as possible. So I'm gonna go for a full polygon here. Oops. Okay. Let's try a full polygon here. Triangle here. Rotate and look around. Make sure you got everything okay so far. Yep. Here. One triangle. Actually, I'll make this a full polygon up here. I'll make this a full polygon here. There. Triangle here. So to get a better curve in the back here, what I might do is actually polygon cut the back of the head. One more loop. Doesn't hurt me, doesn't do anything wrong to the model or anything like that. It's just what I have to do. So your model, you might want to do something different, but it's up to you entirely. But because I created that loop, I get a much better use of vertexes here, and it means I have to use a lot less triangles to create my final hole where I'll put my ear. See, so I got that shape. I'm going to make sure it's part of the same smoothing group. I'm going to let go of this, put these all in the same smoothing group 1. And if I add mesh smooth to this model, oops, I go to perspective, there you go. You can see adding that new line in the back didn't hurt anything at all. And now I have room to put my ear, and it should mesh smooth correctly all together once I attach everything. So what I'm going to do now is, now that these are adjusted and they can fit the ear form, these polygons should be exactly in the same place as the ear. So if I go, let's say, to wireframe mode, and I can see the back polygons, normally they're gray wireframes in the background. I'm looking, 100% lined up. So if I rotate around, you can see that these empty holes here, my ear does push in a little bit right here. I can do some adjustments there. But now the entire shell lines up, except for the front part here of the ear, which I have to do some adjustments to make sure that it works and welds together correctly on my face. So now that this lines up correctly, I can do a overall weld. So I highlight all these polygons. I go to weld mode. I make sure my weld is on a low setting, decently low, but low enough where it can start welding the back vertices together. So these vertexes together. So I'll undo that so I can just select just the ear. And I go over, make sure everything is over itself like that. And I can either collapse or weld. So what I'll do is I'll just weld. See, 2 vertexes down to 1. If I weld this one here, 2 vertexes down to 1. And I'm just going around and making sure that all these back end vertexes, when I select them, it says 2 vertices selected. Make sure they're welded. So 2 turns into 1. 2 turns into 1. And I'm just going around on the inner ear, like where it connects to the head. And then just making sure that all those are welded shut together. And it looks like they all are now. Great. The easiest way to tell if things are welded together is go to element mode, and if it selects everything, including ear, that means indeed they are welded together. Look at that, we got the back of the ear, and if I mesh smooth it out so far, you can see that we do get a connecting point there, the back of the ear. Although it needs slight adjustment, it does look good, it does look attached to the model, and we just need to make sure that this part now flows into the head as well, and we can move it a bit back as well. So if I go to polygon mode, and I grab, let's say, a loop here, that loop here. If for those who didn't know what I just did, because maybe I showed you a little in the earlier videos, if you select one polygon in Edit Polygon mode, hold Shift and move up and down on that polygon, you can see you can select the entire ring going that way. And if you go left or right, you can select the entire ring going that way. So basically what I do is I select this entire ring, and I'm just going to push this back slightly. Like that. And now I'm going to delete this polygon here. Okay, maybe not delete. I'm trying to think what's the best way to do this. Okay, I'm going to actually weld these vertexes all together. Like that. I'm going to weld these vertexes down here. So what I'm left with is these vertexes here. Which I push closer towards the head. Like so. And we're going to have to adjust it along with a new cut. So I go to Edge, and I'm going to cut along the head model here. And I'm going to cut a line through here. So that means we now have a vertex that we can weld to. And I pretty much just leave that there so that I can weld these lines to one segment or another. And even though it's triangles or anything like that, pretty much I can just weld these and anything else I need. So I can make one big triangle here and cut across to the ear. So what I'll do is cut, cut, and then try and weld there, and then see how the results turn out for that. So weld. So it created 2 triangles. This is still polys. It still flows a little bit. I could ideally cut from, if you want to back up just a couple steps, you go to polygon cut. We can cut from this line here, and bring this up here. So what we get is 2 vertex lines, and then we can just go to our left view or right view, and I can lower one down here, keep one up there. So what I get is one triangle, sure, but when Mesh Smooth hits, it's going to look okay. It's actually going to flow pretty well with everything else. I can turn off Mesh Smooth right now, go to Vertex, Weld here, Vertex, Weld there, and I can adjust these vertexes and collapse them as much as I need to. Collapse, collapse. Collapse, collapse. Right there. Go to Mesh Smooth. Perspective. There we go. And we have a nice flowing model now. Now, obviously, this is a little bit finicky, and you'll need some practice to make sure this ear looks good. I still use a lot of adjustment here, and you can see if I go to classic mode, we still need some adjustments. If I go to Turbo Smooth, which I think is what some of you have been using very often, Turbo Smooth, you can see that there's a little bit of a harsh edge around here. Doesn't look too bad in the back. More iterations, obviously, the smoother something looks. But do your adjustments, adjust your ear as best as possible so that it's attached to your face. It looks good when it's rendered. There's still a little pop in the back of the face, but it blends well with the rest of the face. I can do a little bit more adjustments to make this blend a little bit better. But I'd say so far, we have a decent looking head with the ears attached and everything. And obviously, I'm going to have to mirror all this to the other side. So I go Tools, Mirror, for your reference. And we copy and move this over. Like that. And you can see our character's looking very good now. We have the ears set up, which is great. My ears could have been slightly lowered on my head, but I can always adjust those as I go and make sure it's part of the same smoothing group. So everything is part of the same smoothing group 1, because even in low poly, we have our ear here. And you can see like there's some vertexes that are pulling a little bit, but that should be okay. And yeah, we have a very, very good model right now. So when it comes to hair, I kind of want you guys to create your own hair. We're doing low poly hair, blocky hair, right? So the way I like to do hair is usually I will create a cylinder like this. I will make it fairly low poly, so let's say about 6 sides. And then I will convert it to editable poly. And I'll weld one end of the hair. So grab all the vertexes from one end of the hair and I'll weld it. Turn that up super high. And I'll shrink all these polygons to form like a hair strand. Something small. It gets smaller and smaller and smaller, right? Something like this. I'll delete the polygon cap here. And what I'll do is I'll adjust this hair wherever I see it should go. And for advice, I usually go to vertex mode, soft selection, and use soft selection. And I increase this number, the fall off number, to what works for me best, like something like this. You can increase it however much you want. Edge distance is good for modifying a single strand of hair. If you start grouping up hairs, edge distance will grab one strand of hair at a time. So if you turn that on, it only grabs what's a part of this hair. But if you have multiple hairs and want to affect a lot, you can just turn off edge distance. But usually I keep edge distance off until I need it. And here we go. And so like I'll rotate. You can see here. So we got like one strand of hair in, right? Do some rotation. I make sure it's in place the way I want. Rotate backwards. You know, now we already have one strand of hair like that. We can always mirror this to the other side of the head. So we have one strand of hair, and you can always use Turbo Smooth or Mesh Smooth on these as well. Turbo Smooth. You can see it comes off sharp on the end, but smooths out all around. That's okay. That. Turn off Turbo Smooth. And you can always go to Element and copy this, right? So if we go to Element, and I copy this around, that's okay. I'm running into a weird issue here. Use soft selection. Oh, because soft selection was on, it wouldn't clone the element. So I clone this element, and I can bring it around here. I go to wireframe mode, like this. You know, and do some placements, right? Do some placements of your hair wherever you want. Now, hair does take a lot of time, but take your time with it and make sure like the clumps resemble what you want them to look like, right? So for me, my character has very spiky hair, so I got these big clumps of spikes. But if you have really fine hair detail that you need to duplicate, then work in small strands, work in smaller strands, right? The key to learning how to do hair properly first is to learn how to make chunks of hair. So if you have a male character with hair that's really close to the body, what I'd actually suggest doing, or if you want to work in this way, here's a different way of making hair. I go to my character's head, I turn off Turbo Smooth. I grab all the polygons of where the hair should start. So let's say something like this, all the way to the back of the head. I go around the ear, maybe a little bit in front of the ear here. So let's say this is my hair area. I will copy this area. I'll hold shift and move these polygons to the same exact spot I copied them from. Like that. And I'll clone to object as new one. This is called hair. So now I have two objects that are very much nearly overlapping each other, and one's called hair. I'm going to go to the modifier of just my hair. So just this hair model. You can see I have this. I'm going to give it another material type so I can see the difference between it and the other model. And I'm going to use a push modifier at a very low setting. Push, like that. I'm pushing 0.16%, so low that it looks like it's still flat on top of this model, but just enough that you can see it on top of this. So now that I have the push modifier and everything's ready to go for my hair, I collapse it. And now I'm able to adjust this hair as much as I want. So if I want to, I can literally go polygon by polygon and create the hair like how I see fit. So if I wanted like, you know, some crazy hair, some crazy punk hair, for instance, I can extrude it out. And it's going to extrude based upon like how the skull is, right? So ta-da, mohawk, done. Nailed it. 10 out of 10. And then you can do your adjustments from there. Of course, Mesh Smooth and everything else all work just fine. So you don't need to have a panic attack. Like that. And Turbo Smooth and Mesh Smooth all work fine as well. Same thing. And you can see I created like a clump of hair right there, right? And you can do your adjustments to that as much as you want. So pretty much when it comes down to doing hair, you work at extremely low poly, you add your Turbo Smooths, you adjust your shapes, just like everything else we've created in 3D Studio Max. Hair is one of the hardest things in the world. Now, don't forget that although you can create clumps of hair and make it look decently good, and then we copy this to the other side to look, you know, just as good on the other edge, on the other end, sorry, I should say. I'll have to delete these polys here. Poof, like that. There you go. So that will mirror to the other side. So the one way to create hair is to do this way. I will teach you guys starting with unwrapping week. Next week will be just learning the basics of unwrapping a character, doing it well with quick pelt, seams, and projection mapping, and then wrapping objects and characters. I will teach you more advanced hair texturing in the second week of unwrapping, which will be our final week. But for now, just worry about doing some clump hair. So just like make a model, clump hair, just assign it different material. If you don't have hair for your character, that's absolutely fine as well. Remember that you should be working on your armor and getting all the armor clothing done for Monday. Okay? So good luck. Good luck on the ear, finishing off that. Good luck on doing some minor hair if you're going to do that. But remember, the focus is on getting models done for the clothing and the armor that look really great. And you can, I know I said Monday to get the entire thing done, but if you need a little bit longer, that's okay because we're going to be unwrapping and texturing those clothing bits as well. So take your time with this as well, okay? Thank you, and see you guys next video.